It took 7 years to reach this point, and as of Tuesday this week, I can say I've fully played through and experienced everything there was on offer in Naughty Dog's Last of Us Part 2. This was a sequel I had been looking forward to for a long time, as the first game holds a very special place in my heart, and I was so excited to get the chance to play the sequel. Everything I play these days, with the exception of World of Warcraft, usually ends up being streamed on Twitch. Normally when I do a story-heavy playthrough for a game like Last of Us, I don't really offer up any sort of reflective or final thoughts. I usually share my opinion during the playthrough as I stream, and you were there to catch the playthrough, you saw the VODs afterwards, or you missed out. I felt compelled to do it with this game based on a lot of what I feel is undeserved hate posted online about it. And I also wanted to just go over some thoughts I had during the playthrough that I couldn't really get into detail on until I'd finished myself, since that kind of discussion invites spoilers, and I'd already gone to great length to avoid them. I must warn you, this is a complete reflective, so there's going to be a lot of things talked about that you maybe won't want to hear about if you're still playing through the sequel, like that scene, which everybody knows, or my thoughts on the ending. The story of The Last of Us Part 2 kicks off in the idyllic setting of Jackson County in Wyoming. There's an immediate unsettling feeling that not all is well, as we join Joel in a very heartfelt talk with his brother Tommy, as he confesses that he has been keeping a dark secret from Ellie about what happened in St. Mary's Hospital 7 years ago.
Maybe I was starting to buy into that old cure business. Maybe I just wanted to do right by her. And then we made it. We found the firefight. Because of her, they were actually going to make a cure. The only catch, it would kill her.
This opener absolutely bowled me over. As you can see, Joel is distraught and acts almost like he's lost Ellie, but it's unclear where she actually is. We soon learn that there's definitely been some kind of devastating damage to Joel and Ellie's friendship, as Ellie is revealed to be grown up now and living in Wyoming with the Miller brothers and many other hundreds of people who settled there after the infection destroyed much of the world. But she is very distant to Joel.
How do you...
Joel, it's pretty late and I gotta get up in a few hours.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna get out of your hair.
I found all of this very emotional at the beginning, as this friendship is so dear to everyone who loved The Last of Us, and the story of the sequel would come to base itself on the roots of this deep affection for our two characters. Joel is not in the story for very long, unfortunately, as he is brutally murdered without warning by Last of Us newcomer Abby, a cold and calculated character who removes Joel from the world we love without any understanding or clear motive in the opening hours, and shocked players are left to pick up the pieces. The story gets quite straightforward from here, with a standard revenge thriller, as Ellie promises to kill Abby's entire gang and her for robbing her of her adopted Firefly father. How Naughty Dog went on to deliver this story, however, is quite layered, with time jumps that ask more questions than they answer initially, and it begins to flesh out the years we have missed since 2013's departure as the two travelers reach Jackson.
Guys!
One of the most controversial plays that the story makes is in the second half of the game, where you reach a very key moment with Ellie, and then the story rewinds itself to the beginning, and you get to experience it from the perspective of Abby, a character that you don't really know anything about, with the writer's clear intentions that you will learn about her and what drove her decision making to that terrible moment that stole Joel from us. I really felt that the writers weren't seeking forgiveness here in how they portray Abby, but they wanted you to understand her and the reasons she had for doing this terrible act. And in my opinion, this was a very daring, bold move, which worked on me, as I found myself reluctantly care about Abby's story more and more as time went on. I wasn't keen to offer forgiveness, but I understood her actions. The sequel is peppered with lots of great new characters to learn about, from bubbly Dina, who Ellie has fallen in love with, a complicated love triangle with Dina's jilted ex Jesse, who can't quite let Dina go, and a really deep dive into the development of the relationships between Ellie, Joel, and Tommy as their stable world in Jackson is ruptured. I loved every character in the game a lot, and I found their backstories carefully written and detailed. No character ever felt like a placeholder, and I often felt like a small part guest in their world. This is complemented by unparalleled facial animation from Naughty Dog and stellar voice acting performances from the game's entire cast. I've seen many revenge films and TV shows over the years. It's a genre that has a low entry bar since anyone can indulge and understand revenge, but I thought that what Naughty Dog tried to do here was unique. They definitely attempted to push the envelope in telling the story from a perspective you don't normally get to experience. I don't know that it really worked that well for everyone, but I will talk more about that later.
Joel told me about this. You ask this guy a question, but you don't make him say it, you make him write it down.
Anyone who's played The Last of Us, or any of the more recent Uncharted's, will feel naturally at home here. The standard control set and UI from The Last of Us returns, and it's been given a gorgeous overhaul with responsive, lifelike movement and ragdolls, which really pull you under the water of full immersion, and it doesn't let go. Combat feels a lot more deadly now, with aggressive flanking human enemies and terrifying new threats in the infected world. Hello there. It is true that the infected do take a bit of a backseat in this game compared to the first one, but that may also be because of how much human killing goes on here in a storyline that is besieged by blood on all sides. Weapons in the game are all handpicked for ultimate bloodied slaughter, from silenced pistols, fire axes, sawn-off shotguns, landmines, and an incredibly deadly crossbow. What I loved here was that there's so much range of choice in most situations. You are able to introduce your own personal flavour into the action and perform some of the most brutal kills seen yet, which is extremely satisfying when you're grieving as a player that you just lost a favourite character in the opening act. Players will be angry and desperate to act out here, and it feels like the game allows and welcomes it. That's not to say the focus on the human story this time around means infected are pushed out of their own world. They're back with updated fight mechanics, faster attacks, and incredibly deadly new enemy types. Naughty Dog were also keen to inject some of the Uncharted set pieces into Last of Us with this sequel, and the way they've done it is nothing short of brilliant, taking the player on a front seat roller coaster of death without any early warning. This leads to breathtaking moments that take you completely by surprise and leave you battling for a sliver of a chance of survival as you plummet to your death into icy water or get pursued by hundreds of infected. Last of Us definitely needed this explosion of Hollywood action, and it fits right in. Oh shit, I knew they were.
Go, go!
Yeah, we need to leave, like, right now. Make no mistake, Naughty Dog's greatest accomplishment in this sequel is its work on graphics. From cornfields to rain-soaked forests, or dilapidated hotels, every corner of this world has been meticulously crafted down to the inch. Weather systems set the mood of a scene immaculately, and every game day feels like the dice roll of real-life weather we face every morning as we step outside, with no previous day like the last. The skyboxes and distant areas players will never reach are often given more love than the area the player is in now, leading to stunning, unforgettable vistas. I pride myself on trying to avoid screenshots or pause screens when I'm streaming a playthrough, but it felt like I was never out of the game's excellent photo mode or grabbing cheeky share screens with the PS4 controller.
You want to hear something?
Okay.
Music in the game comes from two main sources this time. Gustavo Santaolalla returns again with another haunting guitar score that fans will remember from the first game, and this is complemented with another shining moment to have both Ellie and Joel sing through a love of making and playing guitars in their pastime at Jackson. This leads to some exceptionally lovely story moments where Ellie and Joel channel intense emotion through song and fully convey how hurting they are to the player. A particular personal standout is a tearjerker performance by Joel at the beginning of the game.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself.
Before I jump into discussing controversies, I want to briefly talk about some of the powerhouse performances that this game has to offer. Voice actor chameleon Troy Baker provides a flawless performance as Joel, showing how tortured and broken Joel is to have fallen out with Ellie after doing what he thought was right. I am confident that even the most hardened player would struggle to admit they didn't feel like crying after seeing what Joel did on Ellie's birthday.
What the heck?
Okay. Wow.
Ashley Johnson is absolutely incredible as series veteran Ellie, and is given a lot more to work with this time round, with Ellie essentially stepping into the role of the protagonist while hiding her grief in order to channel immense rage and seek those responsible. Jeffrey Pierce manages to completely outclass himself in his return to Joel's brother Tommy, and has a very deep role this outing that actually influences the story significantly.
We'd be leaving Jackson vulnerable.
So they just get to get away with this?
Nobody wants that.
Yeah, but that's what's happening.
His performance pushes pain and anguish of a broken-hearted brother that just wants to see justice done for his brother. I really want to talk at length about how much I love this entire cast, as there isn't a single actor here who doesn't give what I felt was their maximum, but I would like to just give a special call out to two ladies who are new to the series and perform like they've been in it for years. Shannon Woodward is so good as Dina, and brings grounding to Ellie's rampage and helps her see the good in herself.
No, I'm not reading into it or anything. Just...
You know what I love about you? How you let me finish my sentences.
All right. Well, we should probably get going.
Yeah.
And Laura Bailey does the impossible in her deep soul betrayal of the black cloud storm that is Abby. I also really loved Alejandro Eda as Abby's loyal friend Manny, a character who brings comedic relief to a dark storyline.
She'll be okay. She'll be okay.
So, it's only fair that we talk about the most controversial part of the game, which is that scene.
Appreciate it. I'm Mel, by the way.
Tommy, this is my brother.
Ah, you're the infamous Mel. Okay. So that's Owen's partner.
Y'all act like you heard of us or something.
Because they have.
Even if you tried to remain spoiler-free in the lead up to the release of The Last of Us Part 2, you would have had a rough idea of what was coming. When the game was previewed in late 2016, a blood-soaked Ellie sings Walk Through the Valley in the end bedroom of a deserted house. As Joel arrives late to the action and walks through the corridor, seeing bodies strewn everywhere, killed in various ways in each room. He questions her intentions, and she announces that she intends to find and kill every last one of them.
You really gonna go through with this?
I'm gonna find And I'm gonna kill every last one of them.
Nobody knew what this meant at the time, but rumors at that time suggested Joel was dead for the entirety of the game. We know now that this was true, as Joel is brutally killed in the opening hours by newcomer Abby for seemingly no reason. This was an incredibly daring move to make it a narrative for a game that was crying out for a sequel for 7 years. Fans of the game had grown very fond of Troy Baker's Joel and the father-daughter relationship that he shared with Ellie. There are few moments in the original game where you are not controlling Joel, so he is regarded by everyone as being the star of the series. Trailers and promotional material definitely didn't mask the revelation that you'd be playing Ellie in the sequel, but Joel's involvement was ambiguous. Joel's execution is an audio-visual frontal assault on the senses, where he has barely time to realize he and his brother are potentially in a trap before his brother Tommy is beaten unconscious in front of him, and Joel is maimed by a close-range shotgun blast to the knee. Before viewers can recover, this is followed up swiftly by a full-force blow to Joel's skull from a golf club. Control here is given to Ellie with the illusion created for the unknowing player that they will be able to stop Joel's beating, but she ends up being given a front row seat to his death by the assailants before she's knocked out. We're gonna make her watch.
Pin her down! Get off me! Get her hands! Get the fuck off me!
The question here is whether this scene worked. If you read about this scene, you heard it happened in the opening hours, or saw it and stopped playing or watching a playthrough, then it's understandable that you wouldn't have accepted it. Joel was a major character and the driving force behind The Last of Us up until this point. His southern drawl, his love and guardianship for Ellie, and his gentle demeanour made people fall deeply in love with him. He got to be a father figure to Ellie in the way his work as an architect never allowed him to do with his departed daughter Sarah.
All right, good night.
Hey,
Scoot.
Monday at work, huh?
What are you still doing up? It's late.
Oh, crud, what time is it?
It's way past your
But
bedtime.
it's still today.
And he realised his duty to protect Ellie as she grew up under his watch. Joel's death happens without warning and before fans really got a chance to say goodbye. While this is a faithful nod to how our loved ones die in reality, people don't tend to be as welcoming to this in modern media. TV series are always bombarded with hatred anytime a major character dies unexpectedly, with declarations of no longer watching the show as a result. I am a little divided on this, because I really love Joel myself, and I selfishly would have wanted him to be a part of the Last of Us world, even as a guest star, but in the narrative, it made sense why he had to go.
Is that Robert fucking sent them.
Our Robert.
He knows that we're after him. He figures he's gonna get us first.
Son of a bitch, he's smart.
Ellie has grown up a lot in the past 7 years, and she's no longer a damsel in distress that needs to be shown the business end of a rifle, or urged to be quiet when infected draw near. She is fiercely independent from the last time we saw her reach a place of sanctuary with Joel, now with her own adult relationships and her place in the thriving society of Jackson. She doesn't need Joel anymore, and she isn't afraid to tell him that. Just like Daddy's little girl eventually steps out from the protecting shadow of their father to face the real world. There is also the loaded gun of Joel's lie in the finale of Last of Us, where he murders most of the remaining Fireflies in St. Mary's Hospital to save Ellie from a fatal operation to extract a cure for the infection, and then lies to her about what happened. Joel is seen early on to be deeply troubled by the weight of this, and breaks down in an emotional confession with his brother while almost cleaning the paintwork off his guitar. Joel dies not long after this, so this unresolved argument contributes greatly to the feelings of venom and bitterness. So he's confessing the lie that he told.
Come on, baby girl. I got you. I got you.
At the end of the remaster.
Cover the exit. Don't let him get away.
They're doing.
There's also very little time to grieve, as Ellie mounts a Thomas Jane-style Punisher approach to proceedings and starts tracking down and killing every member of Abby's gang.
Not a fucking word.
If you as a player or a viewer didn't find yourself swiftly falling behind Ellie's plan and enjoying the gameplay loop of killing this gang, then you'd likely be feeling a little disconnected and upset. There's no mistaking that Joel meant a lot to everyone, and over the course of the game, some extremely deep and emotional scenes he shares with Ellie in 4 years of flashbacks explains a lot about their relationship, the damage the lie caused, how it ultimately ruined their friendship, and in a really delicate, rewarding scene at the very end of the game, you learn that Ellie made a late-night visit to Joel the night before the game began to forgive him and let a heartbroken Joel know that she'd like to work on repairing their friendship.
Dina. Is she your girlfriend?
No. No, that was just one kiss. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know why she did that.
But you do like her.
So stupid.
Look, I have no idea what that girl's intentions are, but I do know that she would be lucky to have you.
If you fully complete the journey, and you get to experience all of that story as a whole unit, you'll understand why Joel's story had reached its end, and how it made sense that Ellie would replace him as the protagonist. The skill set she uses comes from the years she spent learning from him and being his student, so the sequel allows her to flourish in a way that having Joel around wouldn't have allowed. You're not being truthful if you claim Ellie was a vital part of the first game, beyond getting stuck in the road during firefights and telling incredibly bad jokes in downtime. Reducing an adult Ellie to that truck and trailer role again, or even worse, letting Joel lag behind for the next L3 suggestion on where to go next, would have been a disservice to both characters. Time was the greatest villain of all here, in letting Ellie mature and ensuring that there simply wasn't room for both of them in the storyline. This is where we reach another controversial decision, which is how the story is structured. At several points in the story, control is given to Abby, including the very beginning where fans guide her to Joel's location and bring about his demise before they can realise that she is a threat to him. And then, in increasingly longer segments of play, she becomes the alternative playthrough to Ellie's story, showing what Abby was doing before and during Ellie's 3-day rampage through Seattle. If Joel were the gentle southern uncle that you always looked forward to seeing at family dinners, Abby is not an easy character to love. Her hulking, muscular, physical frame makes her a terrifying nemesis to the tiny Ellie. Numerous playthroughs on Twitch have seen streamers reference a likeness to UFC's Ronda Rousey due to Abby's dominating strength and devastating left and right hooks. Abby is a very cold and menacing character who doesn't seem to have any clear motives, so viewers will not bond with her in the opening hours at all. It's not until well after the halfway mark, when you learn Abby lost her father in the closing scenes of the St. Mary's Hospital, that you begin to understand Abby and what made her fixate on Jackson and finding Joel to make him pay. I felt that the revelation her father was the surgeon who all players shot in the head in the operating room to rescue Ellie was pure genius, as everyone was guilty of robbing Abby of her father at the climax of an identical rampage to rescue Ellie. It's hypocritical to say Joel didn't deserve what he got when you as a player shot a man you knew for 7 seconds who just asked you to stay back while brandishing a scalpel. This was a really great seed for the revenge story and a very believable motive to destroy Ellie's world, although Abby seemingly didn't know much about Ellie initially. I found this particular pointer difficult to believe somewhat, as that day in the hospital would have haunted her waking moments to the point she would have known everyone in that room and why they were there. She relived it in nightmares and was incensed with blind rage that would eventually see her join the wolves and dedicate her existence to finding Joel. I'd say there's merit to the argument that Abby's gameplay drags a bit. I never felt like it ever felt pointless, but there are extended segments that do feel somewhat exhausting in length. Abby's total gameplay is more or less the same length as Ellie's, so taking Joel away in the same game that you dedicate half of it to playing as his murderer isn't going to sit well with some players. It is all necessary in the end to realizing what kind of person Abby is, and if you really understood the full story of The Last of Us Part 2, and the faction war that Abby was part of, and how she really cared for her own people, and would turn against them to save people that she loved, you may not ever accept Abby's actions by the end, but you can at least admit that you understand them. I must confess that I didn't want to kill Abby at the end of the game when I had the chance. I hated her guts, but I understood her motives, and I even found myself invested in her efforts to save Lev, an abandoned Seraphied boy who's lost everything in the fight against Abby's wolves. Abby mirrors Joel here, as Lev is thrown unexpectedly into Abby's world, just like Ellie was to Joel 7 years ago, and will stop at nothing to right the wrongs her people have done. The Last of Us Part 2 is shameless and unapologetic in its desire to tell a very slow-burning tale with a huge reward payoff, and I think this is where a lot of the criticism manifests. Much of the hatred of the game was already at fever pitch on the first evening of the game's launch, before people could really have consumed all of the lore and explored the tale to its conclusion. I saw many people online who just accepted the word of upset critics as gospel, without affording the game the time it needed to deliver a story that a lot of people worked for a long time on. Many criticisms refer to Joel's death as shitty writing. What a lot of people overlook is that Joel did a lot of bad things to ensure Ellie reached Jackson. Many people died at Joel's hands, and he also lied to his best friend to reach that goal. So he took out a debt that ultimately caught up with him. The pseudo-ending to the game, offered initially, sees Ellie settle down with Dina and her son JJ after Jesse's death in the closing hours of the story. Elsewhere, Abby continues her crusade to find peace with Lev and join the Fireflies, but before she can, she ends up being captured by the Rattlers, a new gang operating out of California. Tommy, who is physically unable to continue his course of vengeance following the events of the story, pleads with Ellie for help to see Abby brought to justice, and Ellie finally realizes that she has to see things through, leading to a bloodied final confrontation on the rain-soaked coast with Abby. I've thought for a while about the ending, and I felt it was masterfully executed, but I went in with no spoilers or preconceptions about what I was in for, and I don't know that everyone sitting down to play here was in the same position. There's validation in a feeling of hollowness being described in reference to the ending, as a heavy majority of fans would have wanted a dark ending to the game that isn't delivered upon, and I completely get that. I thought Last of Us Part 2 was an extremely powerful piece of writing, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It certainly had its flaws, and I'm distraught that Joel is no longer with us. I am at peace with why that is, however, and I look forward to seeing where this tale goes in the future, be that through the eyes of HBO, as they launch their own drama series based on the Last of Us world, or through Last of Us Part 3, should we be fortunate to get the chance to come back here to Ellie's world. This is the end of my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. I've never done anything like this before, so I'd be super grateful for feedback you have on the format, or what you thought about the review, and maybe even your own take on the game yourself. Please let me know in the comments below, on my own Discord, or even in private to me if you know me well, as I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching.